that's about to start. All right, so since like we have like 30 something people here, so first, thanks again, Greg. I know last couple of days was a little rough, but
Okay.
I can tell you're getting to back to 100%. And for us, having this type of conversation here is super important, because then we can make players and parents more aware, right?
Yep.
And especially here when we talk about physical preparation, how to get the body ready to perform, and of course to avoid injuries, which is a big thing, right? So the idea is like very open conversation. I mean, you can go. I'm sure you did like many of these in the past, so you know pretty much where the most interest is. But there are many parts. Some questions may arise, so please just feel free. And thanks again for having you here and spending your time with us.
My pleasure. Well, I really appreciate all of you for joining me here. If I'm talking too fast, please tell me to slow down. I apologize for the rescheduling a week ago. Had an unexpected medical emergency, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I'm feeling better and almost back to normal here. So appreciate all you joining me here. So I kind of prepared a little presentation based on some of the questions that Felipe sent me earlier. But again, I'm happy to stop and go off on tangents, and you can ask any questions you want. We can stop at any point in time. Felipe, if I'm going through something and you notice a question comes up and I don't see it, let me know and I'll make sure I can stop and answer those questions. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Let's see. And whoops. Hold on a second. That's not the right one. Hold on. I gotta get. I'm not used to using this one. Hold on a second. Let me go share screen. There we go. Okay. And tell me if you can see my screen yet. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, it's.
I go here. Can you see the full? Yeah. You can see the full slide.
Yeah, men's world ranking. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So I always like to start when we're talking about developing young players. I always like to figure out what are we trying to develop them to be, right? So if our goal is to create the best players in the world, I like to look at the best players in the world to see what they have, and then I create a development plan to create that. So this is something I did. I do at the end of every season. I actually, this is the end of last year. I'll show you a little highlight of the end of this year. But if I took the world rankings at the end of the 2024 season, right? This was the world rankings of the top 10 at the end of 2024. I just did that because we had all the data in. 2025 is almost done here, but you'll see a similar theme here. If I took strokes gained off the tee and I look at the top 10 players in the world, you'll see that 3 of the top 10 in the world are in the top 10 of strokes gained off the tee. 5 of the top 10 in the world, half of the top 10 players in the world were in the top 15 of strokes gained off the tee, and 7 of them were in the top 25. So the average ranking of strokes gained off the tee was about 29th place. I think that's an important thing to realize on the modern game of how important the driver is to ending up in the world rankings. Now, if I go to the complete opposite, strokes gained from putting, you're going to see a very different story, right? You're going to see that only 1 of the top 10 players in the world was in the top 15, right? And that was Xander Schauffele. And there was actually only 2 in the top 40. The average rank was 70th in putting. So people always think putting is the most important, driving second. That is not the case anymore in the modern day of golf. Just so you know, I did this last night just to show you guys. I took the top 5 currently for 2025 in driving accuracy on the left and driving distance on the right. If I take the amount of money that the top 5 in driving distance have earned, it's $26.6 million. If I take the top driving accuracy, it's 7.6, thanks to Aaron Rye. So I always like to point this out is, I think when you're young, you're thinking, I got to hit fairways, I got to be accurate. So as you get better and you play better in this game, you'll realize the farther you hit it, the more money you'll make, the higher your world rankings are. And typically players that lead driving accuracy tend to struggle keeping their tour card. For players that lead the driving distance, even if other parts of their game are lacking, they still tend to maintain their tour cards, which is a pretty important stat. Now, if I look at the PGA Tour average ball speed going back to 2009, average ball speed was 167. It's now 176 miles an hour. This is something we track at Titleist, and we have more data than anybody in the world. And it's interesting. What you're seeing is, finding players that used to be able to hit 170 miles an hour was rare. Now the average is 176, right? So if you've got a player that's like, hey, I'm in the mid 160s, it's really hard to compete against the best players in the world if you're giving them a 1 or 2 club advantage, right? Now, if I look at par fours,
Greg,
yeah.
is it right to say that every mile per hour you add like 2 or 3 yards? Is it
2.5 yards?
The right amount? 2.5
2.5
yards.
yards. Yep, that's correct.
All right, so 25, 30 yards.
Yeah, I mean it's a 2 club advantage, right? And if you look at you have par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s, people think, well, if I'm really long, I have an advantage on the par 5s. Actually, there's way more par 4s than there are par 5s and par 3s. And once again, if you look at the top 10 in the world, you can see 8 of the top 10 in the world are in the top 30 in par 4 performance, and that's because really how far they're hitting the ball, it's such an advantage on the par 4s. Now, like I said, we've tracked this forever. Back in the day, if I go back to 2005, 2000, there was a few players that would hit over 170 miles an hour, and we used to think that was crazy. Now, you can see here in 2008, we had 46 players on the PGA Tour that could hit over 170 miles an hour. Well, in 2024, there was 133. I think currently right now it's 151. Right, that can hit over 170 miles per hour. So it's just the norm now, right? And if I go to even farther, 180 miles an hour, back in 2003, there was only like the John Daly's, there was the occasional freaks that could hit the ball really far, the JB Holmes, there's a few of them. Now we literally have over 30 players that can hit over 180 miles an hour. This is their average ball speed, right? It's just a different game, right? And if I go to the LPGA, I don't think it's as prominent in the LPGA rankings right now. I took last year's data here, and I think because course length isn't as huge a factor with the ladies' game right now, but it's definitely more of an advantage on the men's side. But with that said, I've worked with a lot of number ones in the world in the LPGA, and they are not the short hitters. They're usually the long hitters, or like I said, they lead in putting category. All right. So to me, the major theme there is if we want to develop a competitive player and have a chance of keeping our tour card and having success, power has to be part of your development program, right? So if you think about it, in the past, we used to say we just got to be able to, hit greens, hit fairways. We got to be able to putt, chip. Well, now we've got incredible athletes that can do that. So in your development programs, you have to put the athletic development, you have to put the power development, or else you're going to give players 2, 3 club advantages, and now you're not going to win, right? So when I look at developing the modern day golfer, right, I always say we develop athletes first, golfers second. In the past, we used to develop golfers first, try and give them the skills to play, and then we would try and add, power if we need. Now, today, if you come here to the United States, and we'll show you some stuff here, all we do is we try and get them to be explosive athletes, and then we add golf on top of it, right? Because that's just what wins. Now, when you do this and you say, okay, well, I want to do that. I want to do that with my players in Brazil. I want to make sure that they have all the things that are needed. I always say, if you're going to teach a kid something, the first thing you need is a curriculum, right? So if you go to school, and let's say you want to teach them math, right? I think if you go to any great math teacher, they have developed a curriculum that makes sense. It's like they start with addition and then subtraction and then multiplication, and then they do algebra, and then they do geometry, and then they do calculus. They don't do things out of order. There's like a sequential way of learning. It's the same way for athletic development, right? So when you look at developing a child or creating power, just understand it's not just throwing a bunch of things in there, and one day we'll do calculus, one day we'll do geometry, one day we'll do trigonometry. There's actually a method that works best, and that's really, really important. So I always like to say is like, okay, so what should they do in first grade, and then what should they do in second grade, and what should they do in third grade? And you should lay out a plan if you're a coach or if you're a player, lay out the plan so that you make sure you don't miss anything. You want to make sure that you don't get to high school and you're like, oh, I forgot geometry, right? And it'll limit you from going farther, right? So just because we have an hour and a half here, I want to just cut to the chase. If I was going to take all the subjects that are required to develop the best golfers in the world, here they are, right? They're basically, I've got 7 things here that we would have to develop throughout the curriculum, throughout the lifespan of this golfer. The first 2 are called FMS and FSS. Let me just discuss that real quick. So FMS is basically fundamental movement skills. And the fundamental movement skills are things like running, skipping, hopping, jumping, locomotion, moving from one position to another, weight shift, right? So you'll see a lot of our kids doing lots of stuff on movement, on, like I said, from running to hopping to skipping to sliding. That's locomotion. We do lots of object control. Object control is throwing a ball, kicking a ball, striking a ball. We do multiple types of object control. And object control, you might think, like, why does that matter? Well, controlling the club face of a golf club or controlling distance on how far a ball goes, those are all part of object control. And then we also included in FMS are what I call the ABCs of athleticism. That's agility, balance, coordination, and speed, right? So we do some of those just basic athletic skills. And then lastly, in FMS, we have something we call spatial awareness, or knowing where your body parts are in space. Like, hey, if you want to know if the club face is open or closed while you're looking at the golf ball, you have to have some type of kinesthetic or awareness, right? Those fundamental movement skills are very important in our early development of our players. In first grade, and second grade, and third grade, you'll see them doing all these things just to kind of build the basic building blocks of athletes. Now, once we develop those FMS, we actually add in what's called FSS, which is fundamental sports skills. Now, this is really important. Fundamental sports skills is taking some of the fundamental movement skills, like throwing a ball, and now turning it into pitching baseball. Now, when you take a fundamental movement skill like throwing and you turn it into a sport, the sport has rules. Like, you have to stand on a mound and you have to hold the ball a certain way, and you want to try and it has to go over a certain strike. If there's just more fine motor skills, more things in the sport component than just the fundamental movement skill. Now, this is important to understand, is that if we're trying to develop a golfer, we don't just do golf skills. We do fundamental sports skills. We do like kicking, striking, throwing, hitting. We do all different sports because we find that the best players on the PGA Tour have a multi-sport background, right? So we actually include that in their golf program. We'll have them do all kinds of stuff that's just turning them into a better athlete. So the first 2 things that we include with training with our kids is just basic movements and basic sports skills. Now, once we have those, we also want to make sure that they have mobility, strength, speed, stamina, and power. Now, those 5, I'll call those the big 5 here, are the things that, if I look at our PGA Tour players, they have. And I think it's really important to understand that there's only 3 ways. I'm going to actually stop sharing here for a second. Okay, so you can see me a little better. There's actually 3 ways to hit a ball farther. Okay, if I take all the research, all the science out there, right? The first way is to apply more power to the golf club. Now, power is force times velocity. So either I can apply more force to the golf club. Now, how do I apply more force? I get stronger, right? So I can get in the gym and get stronger, be able to push harder. Okay, so that's the first way. The second way, because power is force times velocity, is just move the club faster, add speed, right? So I can either get stronger or I can get faster. Those are 2 ways to be able to hit the ball farther. The third way to hit the ball farther is what's called impulse. And impulse is this. I always say, imagine if you're sitting on a chair with wheels and I put you 1 foot away from a wall. If I stand behind you and I push you into the wall, I could hurt you, but I couldn't kill you. If we went 30 feet away from the wall and now I had 30 feet to run, I could slam you into the wall and do a lot more damage. Because when I'm 30 feet away from the wall, I can develop what's called impulse. I have more time to apply force and velocity. So the 3 ways to hit a ball farther is apply more force, move your hands faster, or apply the force and the velocity for more time. This is where mobility comes in, because if you have the mobility to take a much bigger backswing, you have more time to apply force to the golf club. If you can generate power from the ground while your club is at the start of your downswing, you have more time to apply that force and velocity. So coordination and mobility are very important for actually creating speed as well. So if I'm trying to develop these explosive athletes, yes, I want them to be strong to create force. Yes, I want them to be fast, to be able to do speed, but I also need that mobility. I don't want to lose mobility for strength. I need all of those to be able to create power. Okay. I'm going to go back here. Let's see. There we go. And so, and all these subjects, you know, these are all the things that I think if you went to any trainer, they would tell you, yeah, you need, of course, we're going to add strength, we're going to add speed, we're going to add some stamina, we're going to add, you know, a power. How do I know if what I'm doing is working or not? And I think this was one of the big questions that you were asking me was, you know, how do our kids know if they're working hard enough? How do we know if they're doing the right things, if it's working? To me, it's all about power. The whole goal here is why we're doing stuff in the gym. Yes, there's longevity and to make sure you don't get hurt, and you know there's some, but the whole bottom line is, can you develop more power? Can you hit the ball farther, right? So how do I know how much power you need? Well, this is something that we've done at TPI, and we have more data on this than anybody in the world. We studied the best players in the world, and we now can tell you, here's the average power that your competitors have, so you should at least develop that. So the way we do this is we do 3 basic tests. And my first advice to you is you should be monitoring this at any age. And I'll give you the age numbers that you should be looking for. But in other words, on every player, there are 3 basic power tests that we do, because I know based on these 3 tests, I can predict your ball speed up to 85% accuracy, which is pretty darn good just on these 3 tests, okay? The first test is a test for lower body power, the vertical jump. Okay, so here's Hideki Matsuyama. So here, just doing an example, here's Hideki doing a vertical jump. All we do is we say you can use your arms, jump as high as you can. We show them what the number is, and we say every time you jump, if it goes higher, you get to jump again, right? And they go as many times as they can until it gets slower. And I always say, pretend like there's a basketball hoop above you and try and grab the hoop, right? Same here's John Rahm, same thing. We're just basically having them trying to jump as high as they can, looking to see how high they can jump. And you're going to see, again, you're going to see all different kinds. You're going to see some players that have some crazy legs, right? And you're going to see some ones that have some very reduced ones, right? So I'd say our guide for, or our test for predicting how much power you could generate from the ground. Now, here's our PGA Tour averages, right? And LPGA averages. I even put long drive on here. Right now, if I took all of our data from the day we started testing players in 1996 to right now, and I put everything in one database, this is the average. PGA Tour average would be 20-inch vertical, LPGA would be 18-inch vertical, and the long drive tour would be somewhere around, I would say 29, somewhere around 30 inches, 29 inches, right? This is what we look at if we look at all of our data. Now, it's something kind of interesting is if I take away all the old data and just look at our modern players, like just take the last 2 to 5 years. If I took the last 5 years, what you're going to notice if you look at these numbers here is the ladies haven't changed, but the men, the numbers are getting higher, right? So I would tell you now on the PGA Tour, we're really looking for the 22, 23-inch vertical as being our average. So remember, we got players that are way above that. We have players that are below that. But really, I don't want you below 20 inches, okay? Like, you know, I would say you want to try and get above the average. So you want to get in that 24, even higher, okay? Now, the next test we do is a test for core power. Your core is pulling. It helps pull, helps crunch, right? So we use a test called a sit-up and throw. Here's John Rahm demonstrating. We give him a medicine ball. We'll talk about the medicine ball here in a second. We have him throw a medicine ball from his back with his knees bent, feet flat. I'll show you. Here's Hideki. So I say, okay, bend your knees, feet flat. Go now pretend like you're doing like a soccer throw-in from your back, right? And once again, we say each time you throw, we're going to measure how far the ball goes in the air. If it goes farther, you get to throw again. Each time you throw it farther, you get to throw again, right? And we'll measure that from where the ball lands to their chest when they're sitting upright, okay? Let's show you a couple examples. Here's Patrick Rogers from the PGA Tour. Now, here's Anna Norquist from the LPGA. All right, same deal. Here's our numbers. So those numbers should look familiar because they're actually the exact same numbers, but just take away the inches and make it feet. It's kind of weird, but PGA Tour average is they can sit up and throw 20 feet. Just like they could jump 20 inches, they can throw 20 feet. I always love it when math makes it easy. I don't have to remember multiple numbers, but same deal here in feet. And also the same deal here is if I look at the last 2 years, you'll notice that the women haven't changed, but the guys have gone up a tad. So I would say right now what we're looking for in our sit up and throw is about 22 feet. I'm looking for about 23 inches on my vertical and about 22 feet for my sit up and throw. Again, that's just average PGA Tour. If you want to know, do you have enough power to not give these guys a 1 or 2 club advantage? Same thing for the LPGA. You know, if you got a young girl and her sit up and throw is 13 feet, you know she's going to be competing against women that are at 18 feet. They're going to have 2 club advantage on her, right? Last test we do is a chest pass, right? So basically the chest pass looks like this. We just have them sit in a chair and they push the ball. Again, I'm going to talk about the medicine ball here in a second. You can rock back. You just can't fall forward out of the chair. And we have them push the ball as far as they can. Okay. Same thing with Decky here. Perfect. Here's Anna. And we're just measuring again how far it goes. Now, here's the cool thing about the chest pass. This is more of a test for your upper body, and it should match the sit up and throw. So the cool thing about it is all these numbers are the same. If you take away the inches in the feet, it's 18 to 22, 16 to 20, 26 to 32, right? And again, if I look at the last 2 years, it's the same. We're seeing the guys have gone up just a tad. Women haven't really changed. So to summarize here, here's our current norms on the PGA Tour, and then we're going to get to training kids. So on the PGA Tour, I like to see a vertical jump of 23 inches, a sit up and throw of 22 feet, and a seated chest pass of 22. If you can do that on the PGA Tour, you should be able to develop 176 mile an hour ball speed, which is average ball speed. So average power should equal average ball speed, right? On the LPGA, 18, 18, 18, that should equal our LPGA average, right? So that's kind of, I'm always looking for like, hey, can I at least make sure I'm not giving away 1 or 2 club advantage, right? So as an example, let's say you have a player comes in and we test them. And let's say their vertical jump is 24 inches, their sit up and throw is 20 feet, and their chest pass is 16 feet. The first thing I'm going to say is, I hope you can see that the lower body is way more powerful than the upper body, right? So the lower body is kind of going to dominate this player's swing. Now, the way I do this, and this is what's really cool about, we have an app at TPI, or you put the data in and it does all this for you, is we take these 3 numbers. We get rid of the inches, feet, and we just make them whole numbers. We take the 4 numbers, 3 numbers, 24, 20, and 16. We add them, divide by 3, and we have an average power number. We'll just call it a 20. And we'll say that their maximum number is 24. So the highest number I see here is a 24. Their average is a 20. Their lowest is a 16. And we have this chart that we use. And this is the beautiful thing about data, is we take those 3 numbers, we take the average 20, and we take the maximum 24, and we can actually predict a ball speed range that this player should be able to hit anywhere between 166 and 184. If they're very efficient at their mechanics, they should be in the low 180s. If they're poor in their mechanics, they should be in the upper 60s. If they're down here, like let's say they're at 148 and they're like, hey, I just can't hit the ball that far. I need to hit it farther. And you did those tests and you saw that they were average was 20 and max was 24. If they're at 148 mile an hour ball speed, but you know their body can create 166 to 184, this is not a conditioning problem. Their engine's plenty big enough. They just don't know how to use it. They need coaching. Or maybe there's something wrong with their equipment. Or vice versa, if the player's like, listen, I want to be on the long drive tour. And right now I'm at 185 miles an hour. And we do the testing and we see that you're kind of maxed out for your body. You know, if you go any farther, I don't think your body can handle the speed and it might break down. This is not a coaching problem. This is a physical problem. This is a conditioning problem. So I always like to try and identify, is this a conditioning problem or is this a technical problem, right? We have the same type of chart for women that we're recording this so you guys can see this. But I use these to try and get an idea of, is this a technique problem, a conditioning problem, or both? How big is the engine and how good is the technique, right? So actually, I'm going to skip this. Here's kind of the moral of the story. If I take this information and I say, all right, listen, you guys are developing this new young crop of players and you want them to be competitive. Here's the crazy thing. If you look at our data, who's faster, do you think, average ball speed, club head speed? Are NCAA college players or PGA Tour players? What do you guys think? Believe it or not, the NCAA has faster ball speeds. So our college players are actually faster than our tour players. They actually dial it down a little bit when they get the PGA Tour. So I really want you to have those PGA Tour averages by the time you go to college, which is 18 years old, right? So if I look at this chart here and I say, okay, vertical jump is the blue, sit up and throw and chest pass here. I really want you to be at 23 vertical, 22 sit up and chest pass at 18. All we do is we do this. We just take every year, we go down one number, right? And we say at 11, you should be able to at least jump 16 inches and throw 15 feet. And then next year, if you can go to from 16-inch vertical to 17, you're on track. From 17 to 18, you're on track. By the time you get to a senior or by the time you go to college, you'll be a PGA Tour average. I do this because I'm not saying that, hey, you know, if you take all 10-year-olds, the average vertical jump should be 15. You're going to have some 10-year-olds that can jump higher and you have 10-year-olds below. I just want you to know whether you're on track or not. So I show this to our kids and I just say, hey, listen, here's our goal. Every year, we're just going to keep on track, keep going up. If you go faster, that's great. We just can't drop below this, right? So in your training, if you have a 12-year-old and you say, hey, are we doing enough lower body power stuff? That's strength and speed stuff. Well, we check their vertical jump. If their vertical jump is 18 and they're 13 years old, we're on track. We're doing great. If their vertical jump is 12, we're not on track. We're way behind. And we need to start improving on that factor, okay? And Felipe, if you're there, I can't see my whole screen's taken, so I can't see if there's questions. You just stop me if there's questions, okay?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the weight of the medicine ball.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second so I can see you guys. Sorry. Okay, so for the medicine balls, we use two types of medicine balls. We use what are called local and global testing. Let's talk about global testing. I always say, you know, in golf, we don't have weight classes. This isn't like mixed martial arts. This isn't, you know, the UFC. Little players play against big players, right? And the big players have an advantage. So for that reason, we use one medicine ball for women and one medicine ball for guys just to see who's more powerful, right? We use a 2-kilogram medicine ball for women and a 4-kilogram medicine ball for men. And that's the numbers I just presented to you, right? So 4 kilos, we test all the guys right away. I'll be able to tell you who can develop more ball speed. And we use 2 kilos, and we can see who can develop more for the ladies. Now, here's the problem with that, though. If I have, let's say I have kids, and I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and the 17-year-old is 200 pounds, and the 15-year-old is 110 pounds, of course, the 17-year-old should be able to throw the ball farther than the 15-year-old. But does that mean that the 17-year-old's good, or that he's just bigger than the 15-year-old? If you want to know, hey, is the 17-year-old good for their size, we also do what's called local testing, which is we take 1 pound per 20 pounds of body weight, or 1 kilo per 20 kilos of body weight, and we use that medicine ball as well. So if you weigh 200 pounds, I'll divide it by 20, we'll do a 10-pound ball. So all people at 200 pounds do a 10-pound ball. All people at 180 pounds do a 9-pound ball, or as close as you can. And we have 1 pound increments with our balls, and we go through and test this. Now, again, all I care about, there's no weight classes. The global is the most important. You know, whoever's going to throw it farther is great. But just because if you're 15 and you're throwing the 4 kilo farther, that doesn't mean that it's great. And if you want to test that, you can test that with the local, right? But basic minimum, do 4 kilo with the boys, 2 kilo with the women, and you'll get an idea if they're on track or not. And I look at this and I go, okay, if their chest pass is way below the numbers, okay, they need more upper body strength. Like, if you're like, what should we do? We need more pushing, more pulling. We need more speed stuff, more explosive stuff with the upper body. If the sit up and throw is reduced, we need more core training, right? We need to get the core involved. If the vertical jumps down, we need more lower body. It's just a great little metric to see if you're on track or not. And I don't care what training you do. I really don't. All I care is if you're on track or not, right? If you're doing some crazy experimental training and you're above track, I'm going to say keep doing it. Right? I don't care as long as it's working, right? But at least you have a way to measure to see, is the kid going to be giving other players a 1 or 2 club advantage or not, right? That's a really, really easy way to do this, okay? Okay, so now, any questions on that? Right, let me go back to sharing my screen here. Hold on. Okay, so There's the boys, there's the girls. I'll put this up here so that way when you get the recording, you guys can see this here. But once again, this is just such a simple way of taking, here's where we want to go. Let's just subtract 1 every year and I'm on track already, right? And if you're working with younger kids, just keep it going down, right? Just keep subtracting down and you'll see, the cool thing about with girls is at 18, I want you to be 18. Right? 18 inch vertical and 18 inch sit up throws. So at 13, I want you to be 13. At 5, I want you to be 5, right? You can kind of, the math makes it really easy here. Okay, now some other fitness, let's say testing parameters if you want to add more than just power. So that was just power. That's the ultimate. If power is good, I don't really know if I care about anything else because that's showing me you have strength, you have speed, you're applying it. Great. If you're like, yeah, but I want to test strength and I want to test stuff, here's some things that we've tested with our juniors all over the world. And just to give you some, I'm going to talk about our golf schools here in a second, but this is to get into our elite development program. So we have, your beginning golf schools, we have, like our starting to develop programs, and then we have our EDP, our elite development programs. To get into our EDP, we have certain minimums. Right, we do fitness testing, and we use bracelets like martial art belts. You have to have at least a black bracelet to be able to get into our EDP program here in the United States. These are the parameters of the test that you have to demonstrate, or you can't get into our EDP program because your fitness is not at the level that it needs to be, and you need to focus on that first. So we do a simple how many push-ups can you do? Boys have to do 35, girls have to do 26, and there's no time here. You just can't stop, right? So you can take as long as you want, but boys have to do 35, girls do 26 push-ups. We do a horizontal pull-up. We put a bar across a rack, and basically the players hold onto the bar and their legs are elevated. So imagine their body's horizontal and they're holding onto a bar and they just pull themselves up. So it's a horizontal pull-up, right? So imagine the body's parallel to the bar, hands are underneath, and they just pull up. Boys can do 35, girls can do 26. A vertical pull-up, this is this is holding onto a bar, hanging from a bar, and pulling your chin above the bar. Our boys can do 6 and girls can do 3. Plank, this is basically laying out on your stomach. You put your forearms on the ground, toes on the ground, and you lift your body off the ground. So just a prone plank. Both boys and girls have to hold a prone plank for 3 minutes. That's just an overall core stamina test. We also do a single leg bridge where they're on their back, knees bent, feet flat. They lift their butt up in the air and they extend one leg. They should be able to hold a single leg bridge for 3 minutes on each leg without cramping or anything. This is just showing us that they put enough general conditioning in their body. And then you can see here's our vertical jump numbers and our sit up and throw and all the numbers, but I gave you that already. But those are some other testing parameters from kids all over the world, just to give you an idea of, hey, are my kids behind or not? Okay. Now, I always say, to me, kids should not specialize in golf until at least age 14, right? I always feel like they should be doing multiple sports, trying to develop those fundamental sports skills. And then once they get to around the age 14, that's usually where most kids have to make a decision if they want to become a professional golfer, right? So we always say around age 14, we make them make the choice. Do you want to become an elite player, or you just want to be, you want to play for fun for the rest of your life? If you say you want to be an elite player, just want to show you guys, we have in our EDP program, it looks like this. If a player says they want to become an elite player, they go into what we call a pre-EDP program. The pre-EDP program is 3 months. And basically, I'll kind of walk you through this, but it's a program that we put players through just so they understand. If you say you want to be an elite player, we want you to understand the volume of training that's required to do this. And in 30 days, if you're like, hey, I can do this, great, we'll keep you going. If you're like, wow, this is crazy, then trust me, professional golf is not in your future, right? So it's almost like it's like a pre-test for them, just to see, can you commit to the volume? Do you want to do this? Because we just know if you don't work that hard, it's not going to work anyway. Then we have what's called a boot camp, which is another 30 days, which is kind of like, okay, you went through the pre-test, you're able to survive, you feel like you can do this. Now we're going to start to bump up the volume a little bit more and get you ready for our 3-year elite development program. This is really our high school program, right? So freshmen coming in, say, hey, I want to be an elite golfer. We go, we can get you in our pre-EDP. You can try it for 3 months. And then if that's working, we'll get you into our boot camp for 3 months. And then in your sophomore year, you can start the EDP program. And by the time you graduate, you'd be done in our 3-year program. It's kind of how we do it. The pre-EDP, this is at 3 months. We have requirements on volume. It's just to see, hey, are these kids willing to put in the work? We say you have to play at least 27 holes per week. This is while they're going to school too, right? So you have to just do minimum 27 holes per week. And at least one of those has to be an 18-round golf. So you have to do one consecutive 18-round. That should be around 6 hours of play. Practice, we're looking for 3 hours of practice, right? 3 60-minute practice sessions 3 times a week. This is on top of their schoolwork. There's a minimum of 3 2-hour classes where we're doing instruction with them. So they're going to instruction to these 3 2-hour classes. And then we're assuming that you're doing a minimum of 3 30-minute training sessions in the gym for an hour and a half of working out. That's 16 and a half hours of volume on top of your normal volume that you're doing for school, right? And again, this isn't crazy. This is just the minimum. If you're not willing to do that, you have no chance in our EDP program, right? And really, the only requirement we have to progress from our pre-EDP to our boot camp is just commitment to the volume. You just have to do it. Right now, once you get to the boot camp and you say, okay, I can do that. We're getting to boot camp. Now we're really going to try and prepare you for ADP. This is another 90 days, right? So we go into our boot camp, and basically all this boot camp does is it's very similar to the pre-EDP, but the only thing is we require a player aptitude test, right? And I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. So our player aptitude test is this, pretty simple. We just say, you've got to play a tournament during these 3 months in the boot camp. I don't care what tournament it is, has to be some junior tournament, anywhere in there. I don't care how well you do based on the, like, hey, did I finish first, second, or third? It's boys have to do 6 over the course rating in a tournament one time, and girls have to do 12 over course rating. If you do that, we'll get you into our PAT or into our EDP program. If you can't do that, you're not ready for our elite development program. You still need more time practicing with your game and doing basic fundamental work. So that's kind of like our player aptitude test, our Q school to get into our elite development program. Okay. Now the boot camp volumes, we're going to bump this up a little bit. So now we're going to be doing a minimum of 54 holes per week. So it's 3 18 holes. So you're going to play 3 times a week. Usually the players will do 1 time during the week and on the weekends. They're going to do at least 3 hours of practice, 3 1-hour practice sessions. We're going to come to 3 2-hour classes again. So we're still having our 3 classes a week, 2-hour sessions. And now they're going to bump up their volume in the gym to 3 45-minute training sessions to 2 1/4 hours, right? That's 23.25 hours of volume. This, again, that's just our that's our boot camp, right? So they do that for 3 months. Once they commit to that, they do that volume and they do it for 3 months, we will enroll them into our elite development program. Now here's our EDP programs. I just put this on here just so you guys can see this. All right, so our EDP program, so this is our first year. Imagine you're a sophomore in high school, you're doing all your high school work. At the same time, you're committing to playing 3 18-hole rounds per week. You're doing 3 90-minute range sessions or putting sessions, just where you're practicing your game. You're doing 3 2-hour sessions with the coach, and you're doing 3 1-hour sessions in the gym, 25.5 hours. As we go every year, we just bump those volumes up. You can see what happens here. We went up to 27 hours, right? And then we added 1 more hour in the gym here. We're going 4 days a week in the gym for our volume 3, or for our 3rd year. Those are our basic minimum volumes. I didn't really go into like, okay, what are they doing when they're playing? What are they doing when they're practicing? I'm just telling you, if you're not willing to put the work in to do this, you don't have a chance. We have too many players that don't even go to school and they do more than this, right? So those are kind of our minimums. Now, I also like to show this. We teach our junior programs all over the world, and I've seen some of the best facilities out there in the world. I was at a facility in Germany a few years ago. It's called St. Leon. It's just southeast of Frankfurt, and they have one of the top EDP programs for senior. They have a high school team, and they have a young adult team as well. They sent me a video of their young adult team going through the training. Now, when I'm going to show you this video, this is their golf club. and they have the gym at the golf club. They have their entire training facility behind the range. And I'm going to show you all of this. Okay, so take a look at this little video here. It's kind of cool. That's behind the driving range. There's the gym. There's the team. There's the boys team. So again, they have 4 hours of training a week in the gym. Thought that was a pretty cool video that they sent, just to give you an idea of what a lot of these training academies are doing around the world. That's not like anything crazy now. That's pretty much standard. If you go to most of the NCAA facilities here in the United States, any of the training, like we have our whole U.S. national team now that we consult with all the same type of training stuff. That's just part of the training program, right? And it's if you don't do it, that's who you're going to meet on the golf course one day. And you're going to realize that you don't have a chance because they have the same golf skills, but they have all these athletic skills, right? So I think that's important for the kids to see that. Now, I'll circle back to that, but you also asked a couple questions about nutrition, and I always like to do something really simple on nutrition. I call it Nutrition 101. Nutrition, we can go crazy at all the supplements, all the things that you can do to enhance your conditioning and your working out and to help building muscle. But for me, when I'm working with kids, the first thing I do is I always say an educated golfer is your best weapon for nutrition. And what I mean by that is the first thing I always teach my kids is that there are 3 types of foods, plain and simple. Every food can be broken down into one of these categories. These are the macronutrients, the proteins, carbs, or fat. And I always make sure that my kids can identify any food, whether it's a protein, a carbohydrate, a fat, or a mixture, right? So these macronutrients, we always explain to the kids, like, listen, all your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, that's all carbs, right? So those are your carbohydrates. And then, of course, all your meat and your cheeses and your fish and your poultry and all that's protein. And then when you get to your fats, right? So there's your oils, your nuts and seeds, and there are certain fruits like avocados and stuff that have fats. I think that's like Nutrition 101 is understand when you're looking at a food, is it a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat? Now, once they can identify that, We then talk about, okay, well, let's say you're going to build a plate, you're going to build a meal. What ratio? And there's all kinds of, advice here on, how much carb, how much protein, how much fat should you have? I'm really more on a category like over here. I'm over more over here on the left. I tell my kids, if you could make your plate 50% carbohydrate, 25% fat, and 25% protein, you're probably doing better than 95% of the people on the planet when they eat. And this doesn't matter if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I always use an example of like, okay, let's say we're going to have a salad for lunch. Okay, so if I put lettuce and I put tomatoes and I put cucumbers and I put onions and I put peppers and I put all this stuff on there, I go, what's that? Well, vegetables, that's carbohydrate. That's 100% carbohydrate. Okay, I only want 50%. So I need to add some protein. I need to add some fat. So how can I do that? And I ask the kids that, and they're like, well, you can put some salmon on there. Perfect. That's protein, right? Or I can put some chicken on there. There's protein. Okay, how do I add fat? Oh, I can add some olive oil on there. Okay, well, now we're starting to make a balanced meal. So I always feel like if you can create that balance of carbohydrate, protein, and fat, whether it's dinner, lunch, or breakfast, at least the kid understands if they're just eating a 100% fat or 100% carbohydrate or 100% protein, that's not usually the healthiest way for us to digest and go long term, right? So the first thing I try and do is teach them what the macronutrients are and the ratios of every meal. Now, the next thing was probably the most important thing is how that food is used for energy on the golf course. Okay, so the reason we eat is because our cells need power, right? Our cells create our muscles need power. To get power, we need fuel. Just like I tell my players, just like a car, we need to put gasoline into the car. You need to put food into your body to be able to power your body for the 18 holes. Now, here's the thing. Well, those macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fat, if you give me 1 gram of protein, I'll give you 4 calories of energy. That's like for $1, I'll give you 4 gallons of gas. For 1 gram of carb, same thing. I'll give you 4 calories of energy. Now, here's the interesting thing. With fats, for 1 gram of fat, you get 9 calories, right? So it's over double the amount of gasoline. So I think every person is different, and you have to go through and try and figure out what works for you. But I would tell you, most players on the PGA Tour, you'll see them eating things like trail mix or like a protein bar that's mainly like nuts and seeds, because you'll see high fat content, because for less amount of volume, so less grams, you get more fuel, you get more energy, and it tends to slowly release over the round. And it tends to work the best. Where if you're just eating a carbohydrate, like you just have banana, it's a short burst of gasoline, but it runs out after 2 holes, and you have to eat again. You have to keep going. So just understand that proteins sometimes take harder to digest, and you don't get as much power. Same thing with carbohydrates. They're faster to digest, but there's not a lot of power. Fats tend to be the one that gives people the most sustained energy, which is why you see that with majority of players. Now, with that said, there are still players that I do better with just protein. I do like jerky or tuna sandwich out there. There are players that do carb loading. I like a banana or a piece of fruit, and I just do it every 2 holes, every 3 holes, knowing that I need to keep replenishing the fuel. As long as they understand that, right? So they understand how they're getting their fuel. And then I always talk about hydration. For me, water with a little bit of Celtic sea salt that gives you the electrolytes, just a little dab, just like a little dab of sea salt in there in your water is the best hydration out there. And I always say that you should be taking a swig after every shot. So if you hit a driver, you take your bottle and you take a big gulp of water. Go to your next shot, hit. After your next shot, take a gulp of water. If you do this every 2 holes, you should probably be going through a bottle of water, right? You really want to be consuming about half your body weight in ounces of water. So just, I like the swig after every shot rule. Usually you'll stay hydrated. To me, that's nutrition 101, right? I'm going to stop sharing. So I always like to do this. So my summary of what I took from some of the questions, Flippy, that you asked, and I'm going to go back to some of those questions, was, okay, number one, what components do I need to develop in the gym to make sure that our players have the chance to be the best players in the world? We talked about they need fundamental movement skills, fundamental sports skills, speed, strength, power. They need all those things. Now, how do I know if I'm getting those? I test power. It's the ultimate result of all of these. So we showed you how to test power. We used the 3 tests: the vertical jump, the chest pass, and the sit up and throw. I gave you numbers of, for the men and the women, the best in the world. And our goal is just to make sure by the time they get to, college, they're at those numbers, right? So we have this progression. Now, if you're like, man, my sit up and throw is really poor on this player, okay, we need to do more core training with them, right? Get some stuff in, and at least we can target their training. And here's the thing about exercise. There's the best website in the world. It's called YouTube. You can find 1 million exercises. You just need to know what to work on, right? So if you're like, oh, I need lower body power, put in lower body power. You can go onto our website, mytpi.com, and put lower body power. We'll show you 1 million exercises on there. But at least you have a way to test to see if it's getting better or not, right? And then, like I said, I believe that if you want to be great, the greats work harder than anybody, right? I've never worked with a number 1 in the world that was lazy. I mean, they're always, they work, and it's not really work to them because they love it, right? It's kind of their passion, but they put in volume and volumes and volumes of work, and they always want more. And I'm always trying to slow them down, not trying to motivate them, right? So to me, you need to prove to me that you have the work ethic to be able to do this. And if I'm creating an EDP program like I showed you, I'm going to put mandatory volumes that you should be saying, this is easy. Can I do more than this, coach? Of course, right? If I'm going, hey, you didn't play the 18 holes that we thought, oh, sorry, I got busy over here. I just know that kid's it's not going to make it. It's not going to work, right? So we have these, the way we structure it, the pre-EDP, the boot camp, and then the 3 years in our EDP, you can structure that any way you want, but I really feel like you should put some minimal volumes in there that include all the components: training with your trainer at the gym, practice on your own at the course, doing range sessions with the coach, working on lessons, and then playing, right? So competing, right? Making sure you have those minimum volumes in there. And then lastly, you asked me about nutrition. And to me, like I said, nutrition, I didn't talk about like, okay, when you're strength training, it's probably good to do some protein shakes to try and help build muscle so you're not sore. There's lots of things with supplements that you can do, multivitamins, antioxidants, a lot of things. I really feel like when you get to a certain level, that we should do some blood testing on everybody just to see what you're missing, and we can supplement anything you're missing. But to me, the biggest problem is diet, is people just don't know what to eat. Kids aren't educated from their parents. They're not educated at school on what they should be eating. And us as coaches need to at least give them the basic education. We say, hey, listen, there's 3 types of foods. There's proteins, there's carbohydrates, and there's fats. And test them. Go, hey, here's an apple. What's this? Here's a steak. What's this? Once they can do that, then let's practice putting a meal together. Okay, we're gonna have breakfast. What do you guys have for breakfast? They say, oh, I have scrambled eggs. I'm like, okay, what's that? They're like, well, eggs is protein. Like, okay, so that's 100% protein. There might be a little fat in there too, but that's mainly protein. I go, how can we add the carbohydrate and the fat to make this a better meal? Well, I can put some avocado on there. Perfect. There's the fat. Okay, how do we add some carbohydrate? Right? Well, hey, we can add some tomato on here. Like, okay, now you're talking about a balanced meal, right? And just making them understand. And it's crazy, in our junior program, we get complaints from the parents, because the parents will come to us and go, I don't know what you're teaching my son, but he's now complaining about what I'm making him for dinner, that it's not balanced, right? Well, now I know where I'm doing our job, right? So we want them to be educated, to be able to educate the parents. I think if you do that, you're going a long way to really making some strides to improving your players. Okay, so that's kind of this little first 1 hour overview of, I think, some of the questions you had. Now, Felipe, what I would recommend. Now we can go off topic. You guys can ask any questions you want. I'd be happy to go more in detail into any of these, but I hope that was a good overview.
Greg, thanks a lot. It was super, super helpful. And I think bringing all those numbers at least gives a great sense or orientation where the kids should go for. One thing related to mobility, to stretching, how those 2 things are important, and how the lack of mobility can reduce the chance of doing the right swing, or doing, like, having the right technique, and how they should warm up, for example, for rounds. It can be either practice or tournaments. I think you can cover a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay, so great question. So let's talk about mobility real quick. So first of all, something that's really important to understand is, especially depending on what age you're working with, when kids go through their puberty or go through growth spurts, right? When you're in your young teens and you start to grow really fast, your bones actually grow faster than your muscles. So believe it or not, when kids are going through puberty, they become tight because the muscles are getting elongated because the bones are growing. So it's not like the muscle's tight, it's taut, it's been pulled tight, right? So understand that when kids are growing really fast, you have to be really careful to not overstretch players because they're already on stretch because the bones are growing fast, right? Because the bones are growing fast, the muscles are put on tension. It's almost like a bow and arrow where the string is really tight. You can actually do more speed training there, but just be careful on heavy strength stretching. We do stretching during the growth spurts, but it's just gentle, not trying to force anything. To me, mobility is two things that you need to work on for your players: joint range of motion and what's called fascia, which is the connective tissue we have through our body. It's like the white part of a steak. Those are the two areas that tend to get restricted with players. Joint restrictions, like your hip joint, your shoulder joint, your spine vertebrae become restricted. So I have our players in their workouts. We always do some type of mobility work. This is not before they play. This is during their normal workouts. Like maybe, we'll do some type of mobility workout that's focused on at least ankle mobility, hip mobility, spine mobility, and shoulder mobility. And again, you can go on to our website, go on to mytpi.com, go to our Improve My Game exercises and drills and exercises. You can put in hip mobility and we'll show you our favorites. You can just type in there, or like I said, you go to YouTube and you see these, but some type of ankle mobility, some type of hip mobility, some type of spine mobility, and some type of shoulder mobility. And it's something that our players do on every workout, right? And this is, again, not before they play. This is during their normal workout. I like to usually do that before they do anything else. It kind of helps warm their body up. So I think that's really important. Just with the caveat is if they're going through their growth spurt, be careful. Don't do too much mobility stuff, but make sure as soon as those bones stop growing, we got to get those muscles to elongate. And just remember that joints tend to do really well with distraction. So if a joint is tight, like your hip joint is tight, if you're doing a hip stretch, any hip stretch, if you do it, first thing you do is if you try and distract your hip, like take your foot away from your pelvis to feel like you're almost dislocating your hip and then do the exercise, it usually is more effective. So some type of distraction with the joint as you're doing your mobility tends to work great. If it's more of tissue, if the tissue is tight, it's not really the joint, it's more the tissue that you feel tight. That's more dependent on time under tension. So in other words, if I'm doing a stretch, let's say I'm gonna do a stretch with rotation and I'm trying to do a twist. If I'm going after a joint, I'm gonna try and distract, maybe expand my rib cage by breathing, try and open up the joints and rotate. If I'm going after tissue, I'm gonna try and rotate and I'm gonna try and hold it for at least 90 seconds. Tissue tends to respond with time. So the more time under tension, we tend to loosen up, where joints tend to respond to distraction. Okay, so, and you can try both of those. You can have kids try and distract as they stretch. If that works, they probably have more joint problems. If that doesn't do anything, have them hold the stretch for a longer time. And if that works, it's probably more tissue. And you kind of learn where their problem is, tissue or tension, or joint. So that's important. Now remember, mobility is important so that you can get range of motion. Get more range of motion, you can apply more power and speed for more time. That gives you that impulse, you can hit the ball farther, right? So I feel like that's really important. Okay, so that's and again, the major mobile joints that you want in the golf swing is the ankle, the hip, the thoracic spine, your mid spine, your shoulder, and if I add one more, the wrist, right? You'd want to make sure those are your major mobile joints. Everything else kind of tends to be stable, and that's where you really want to get your mobility from. Now, you asked the second part of that question. I'm trying to remember what you asked. You said mobility.
The warm up. The warm up.
Oh, the warm up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the warm up. Okay, so now what's really important, as we've done a lot of research on this, is if you're going to go play, right? What I want to do is I want to wake up the tissue. I want to make it so that it's explosive and it's powerful. There's a lot of research that shows that if you do heavy stretching right before you go play, that it actually decreases power. What it does is it kind of takes you into range of motions that you're not really used to and you're not really going to control. So what you'll see with most players, before the round, we're not doing stretching, we're doing activation. We take cables and we're doing pushing and pulling, or bands, pushing, pulling, chopping, lifting. We're doing maybe some light cardio, just some short little sprints, maybe doing some lunges with some dumbbells, maybe, lightweight, but more resistance training, not mobility before they work out, before they go play. And basically think of it as I'm like lighting the fuse to go explode the muscles. So I want to kind of warm them up first. So I'm always trying to do some type of hip hinge, like a little deadlift or a knee, like a lunge. I'm trying to do some type of pushing, pulling, chopping, lifting as you're rotating under tension on most players. You'll see most players do a chop, a lift, a push, a pull, and then they'll do some type of hip hinge. And to me, like it's the reps and the volumes are low, so it's a little heavier weight, somewhere probably between the 5 to 8 rep max weight. Okay, so a couple reps, like 2 or 3 reps with each one of these, just to warm the muscles up. It's usually about a 20 to 30 minute activation exercise. And once they feel like everything's alive and you got a little blood going, we're out to practice, right? So that's our pre-round warm-up for most players. Now, with that said, everybody's different. You know, you might have a player that goes, no, actually, I play better if I stretch before I play. Okay, we have to figure that out. But in general, most players will do better with activation or resistance training before they play versus stretching. Okay.
Perfect. I think Zé está aí? Você levantou a mão?
Yeah, I'm here. Part of my my doubt was you already asked Felipe about the warm up session, and it takes around if I got this right between 30 and 1 hour, right? So
pre-turn, like before they play, it's usually somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes.
20-40 minutes. Okay, got it. And I have in regards to your presentation about the EDP 1, 2, or 3, I noted that you just established the amount of time for the practice has increased from ADP 1 to ADP 2 and ADP 3, right? The practice has
Correct.
And the 54 hole, you just keep the same for all 3. So my question for you is about the days in terms of age. It depends of the age.
What I just showed you there is our typical elite development program for high school, right? So that was for high school. So the pre-EDP and the boot camp would be your freshman in high school, so like 9th grade, right. And then 10th, 11th, and 12th. So your senior in high school would be our EDP 3.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's
because they have all their high school work on top of that, so they have their school work on top of that volume. But we're just saying, hey, listen, if you want to become a college player or even better, a professional player, sorry, it's not going to get any easier. You're going to have to work harder, even more. So this is like, if you're not willing to put this work in, you should think of something else.
Yeah. A quick question in terms of distance, how far the golf course is from the facility? Is the school usually?
Well, that obviously depends on the school, but I'd say here in the United States, obviously we have a big advantage here. Most high schools, you'll have a golf course within 15 minutes of every high school here in the United States, almost.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many golf courses are there in Brazil now.
Like 110, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I probably have 110 in my town. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of golf courses here. We definitely big advantage. And again, I'm just showing you what we do here. And remember, these are minimums, right? Like we got players, in other parts of the world that don't even go to high school and they're just playing more. Like if I go to Korea or Japan or China, I mean, they'll laugh at those numbers, right? So, and I do believe if you want to have a great player, they've got to get on the golf course. You've got to get out there and play. As a coach, the best thing you can do is create some type of relationship with a golf course that'll let kids get out there, even if it's just 9 holes. Getting them to get out on the course and play is very important. Is that the biggest challenge there? Is getting access to a golf course?
I think one of them. I think most of the players here, or the parents you have here, we have like 4 big states of golf in Brazil, which is São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul. Those are the main golf course concentrations. So where we have most of the golf courses. So for most of the people here, a few live close to the golf course. Some can be like 40 minutes to an hour to the golf course. So if the kid leaves the school like by 3 in the afternoon, 3:30, I mean, they're not much
I mean,
time lapse
obviously,
for that.
yeah, obviously, you guys have to use your best judgment on what those volumes are and what they can do. You know, I mean, obviously, they got to graduate from high school. They got to get their education. So you have to put that in there. But I think there needs to be some type of effort that needs to be shown by the kids. And again, you should be saying the kids should be saying to you, like, our kids are like, Coach, I do way more than this. I'm like, perfect. I just want to make sure. Like that's just your minimums, right? If I'm trying to force you to do that, we got problems.
Gregor, can you share the presentation with Felipe, and then Felipe can share the material that you show us today?
Of course. Let me.
That's great.
Let me. Actually, I'll do that right now, and I will. Yep. I'll email that to you, Felipe. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Okay. Yep. No problem. What else, guys? Anything else?
Yes.
I think Victor has some question.
Yes.
Go for it, Victor.
I'm curious about endurance practice. Like here where I teach, you know, the kids they like soccer, so I kind of empathize that part, so they can have fun after a hard work of technique and practice. Golf is hard. I live in Rio de Janeiro, it's very hot. So sometimes they come over here, they are, come on, what I'm gonna do? So I try to mix some stuff. I used to practice a lot. I did CrossFit for a long time. So I know how it is to be like in a good shape to go play. And I used to play 36 holes, like kind of a basic. But for me to pass this type of things for kids in my town is very hard. So like they are very lazy. I don't know if it's about the cell phone. I don't know if I am like I'm too old for them, maybe, I don't know. But I put soccer many times because I know like they're gonna use balance. The stamina is gonna be higher, you know. But sometimes, because where I live, the kids, they don't have much. How can I say? They don't eat very well here. They are poor. That's the word. They don't have many things, assets to be a high players. But I have some players. They love to play, but they are very difficult to do the fitness. You know. So
again, like it's
the day, but they don't come on the gym day. You know, like so. I have to put soccer many times, but I know they need the power to get muscle and everything. So I was wondering if like it is okay if they play soccer after 18 holes.
100%. So I love multi-sport training, but Victor,
I like endurance, but I cannot ask too much from them because I don't know about the nutrition, you know, because where I take care, they don't have
this. Yeah, this is why I presented those power tests to you. To me, all I do is I go, listen, I know what the best players in the world, I know how much power they can generate, right? I can know from their vertical jump, their sit up and throw, and their chest pass. If you can do that, you don't need to work out. I'm sorry, like you've already got enough power. I'm cool.
I just have to test and check it out and see how they are doing, right?
Yeah. And if you're like, hey, listen, if you can't do that and you're asking me why all your friends are out driving you, it's because your engine's not big enough, right? Like, I'm sorry, there's going to get to a point where it's just you're never going to win. But at least you're showing them, you know, some kids you're going to have, Victor, that they genetics wise, they don't have to work out. They're great. They got great stuff. They're just lucky, you know, they get to a point. But a lot of the kids are going to go, and especially the ones that they're like, I don't know why, you know, John's out driving me by 20 yards. I'm like, well, let's do the power test. Let's check. I know what John's numbers are. Let's look at your numbers. And right away, he's going to go, holy crap, this is, you know, that's why I love testing kids, and I love testing them together because the kids can kind of see like, oh man.
Testing together is a good key, right?
Big time, because now they're competing with each other too.
Push the other one. Cool.
100%.
I had
and what's the best way to measure the jump, the vertical jump? Because you have the power play there, but
easy. You can take a tape measure up a wall, have them stand next to the wall and reach up, see where their fingers touch, and then have them jump and touch and just measure the distance between. Simple. Perfect. And by the way, for endurance training, if you know, if you look at our training for endurance, we do what's called HIIT training, high intensity interval training.
Yeah.
Which is basically just short bursts. Like give them a jump rope and just do like 20 seconds, as many jumps as they can, 20 seconds, pause for 20 seconds, do it again for 20 seconds, pause for 20 seconds, and do 3 20-second bursts, and do that like 3 to 4 times a week. That's only 3 to 4 minutes of high intensity. That almost equals 3 hours of long duration running.
And
right?
jumping ropes, you are also taking care of your ankles and knees, right? Balance and everything.
Yeah, whether it's on a bike where you're doing it, on a treadmill or a jump rope, but these short sprint, like give everything you got for 20 seconds, pause for 20 seconds, on for 20 seconds, off for 20. Just do 1 minute of high intensity at least 3 to 4 times a week, and most kids will never have a problem with endurance on the golf course.
Cool. And how I can tell them how necessary is to be like hydrated and drinking on the course and eating snack on the course. I have very difficult on this because they are very addicted to sugar. So for me to teach them, peanuts is better, or bananas.
But like I said, to me,
education kind of crybabies, you know, like I have to take care of the emotionals so they don't do this stuff.
Listen, you got a hard job as a coach, right? So you're teaching them all aspects here, and that's why, like I said, I like short doses of education, right? I like, and Felipe, I just sent you the slideshow, so hopefully you should get that in your email. I like showing them, like I said, like, first of all, do they know, like, what is a sugar? Like, do they know what a carbohydrate is? Do they know that an apple is sugar, right? I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to eat healthy. I'm just going to eat fruit. I'm like, well, that's sugar, right? So that's carbohydrate, right? I know it sounds like it's healthy, but that's not really healthy, right? So now if we combine, so showing them how to create those meals, the only thing you can do, Victor, is you can educate them. You're going to have kids that are going to take your education and they're going to run with it. And there's going to kids that are going to, but that's, you know what I mean? I don't force anything with our players. It's the ones that, you know, that are, I expose them to everything, educate them to everything. I'm always there to answer any questions, help do stuff. And you'll see the ones that start to do the stuff, they start to perform better, and then they usually drag the other kids with them. Because the other kids are like, I don't like
also I notice here, I have to take care about the amount of information I give to them. Yeah. Like if I talk and I give too much information,
small doses.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I get excited. Repeat the same information, but short information, right? They start
like if you're going to do,
they look fun at me. Victor, you are funny. I was, oh man.
Yeah, like if you're going to teach them nutrition, the first lesson is going to be what's a protein, what's a carbohydrate, what's a fat. We might have that little lesson for the next 2 months, right? I'm just repeating it over and over again. Then after 2 months, they're like, Coach, we got it. I'm like, okay, then we'll go to the next thing. Like I'm never trying to rush things. I'm just slowly dispensing the information. And then, like I said, you're going to have kids that want more information right away. I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many times parents come to us and they're like, "What have you done to my kid?" Like now they're questioning what I'm feeding them, and well, that's when you know you're doing your job right.
Yeah, cool.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Good question, Vitor. Who else? Good question. I think that for me, maybe the most important part here is since you put like thresholds, right? So if you're not doing this, I mean, don't consider like they're going to be able to compete in the highest level. I think that's a really important message for players and for parents, because
listen, I have that conversation with our professional players. I have players that have been, they've been trying to make it for, they're 28 years old now, and they've been, doing on and off mini tours, and they've been on PGA Tour, Latin America. They've been on Corn Ferry. They're going, I just don't know. And I'm sitting down going, listen, dude, I'm telling you, these are missing. If you don't do these, it's just not going to work. I'm not going to lie to you. This is what's missing. And a lot of it's physical.
And what I feel is like when they have the ability, they don't understand how important to have other stuff too. So it looks like, oh man, I already know how to chip out, how to do flops. Hey Victor, come on, I shoot 1 under today, man. Take it easy. And I was, yes, man. But you are tired. You should 1 under today, but tomorrow how is it gonna be?
I always say, listen, if you shot 1 under today,
smart and educated, right? Small.
Yeah, I just remind him. I go, if you shot 1 under today, Scotty Scheffler would have shot 10 under. Just remember that. So, it's not. It's if you think it's good, There's always somebody who's working harder, making it better. So, listen, every time I tell my kids, I'm like, as long as like the number one advice I give my kids is, no matter what you do when you play, I don't care what you score, I don't care what happened, as long as you learn something that will help us improve our next round, it was worth playing, right? So every round I sit down and we go, okay, what did we do good today? What did we learn today? And what are we going to do about it for the next tournament? And every time we're adding new information, adding stuff, just imagine how good we can get. That's the key. I don't care if you win.
And
Those three questions was good now. In the end of the day, ask those three questions. And
What we do is we take their phone, we do a voice memo. So what they do is they hit the voice memo and they go, okay, I was playing Players Championship today. Here's what I did well today. So I putted really well. I really got the line, and the green reading was really good. What did I learn today? Well, man, here at sea level, the ball wasn't flying as far, so I was short in a lot of my targets. So tomorrow I'm going to adjust my numbers. I'm going to try and play, a little bit longer on each one of mine, and that's it. They send the voice memo to their whole team, and we all can hear it and listen to it and see if we like it, enjoy it, or if we agree with it, and we can call them, and it just gets them used to going, what did I do good today? What did I learn? What am I going to do about it?
Perfect. I think Alex or Arthur, they have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
So, how much time does a PGA Tour player like he practice per week, and like how he divides this time? I don't know, like maybe 2 hours on the driving
Great
range per day, 1 hour on the putting green, like this stuff,
Yep, great question. So, first of all, I always like to explain that there are multiple types of weeks for PGA Tour players. Okay, so let's talk about the most obvious one, tournament week. Okay, so a tournament week, if you think about it, they're usually traveling either Sunday night or Monday morning. Okay, Tuesday they're usually playing or walking 9 holes, walking the course, taking notes. Or on Wednesday they're playing a pro-am. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday they're playing, right? So just understand you have that structure on a tournament week, right? Now, before every round, we're going to do our pre-round warm-up. So that's part of our workout and our range session, right? And usually that's not really trying to learn. It's just trying to, I call it sight the gun. Just make sure everything's dialed in, make sure we're hitting all our stuff. So there's that inherent practice session on the range before they play during a tournament week. I always say it's hard to get real work done during a tournament week because you're not really trying to learn there. You're trying to go to work. You're trying to go play, right? So it's really just tournament week is more of a play type of stuff. Now, if you take, that's tournament week. Okay, then we have a week I call a rest week. A rest week is I have no tournament this week and I have no tournament next week. Okay, so I have like a 2-week break and it's the first week. That's a rest week. Now, a rest week is number one, recovery. I need to recover. If I've played 3 or 4 weeks in a row, I need to get recovery time. So the first couple of days, I'm doing very minimal practice. I'm doing some stuff, recovery in the gym. I'm doing a lot of recovery techniques from hot, cold, infrared. So I like doing things to get my body. And then really it becomes more of a slow progression back into volume and working on what we'll talk about their practice sessions in a second. So the rest week is the first couple of days is kind of downtime, more recovery, more conditioning type of stuff. Get some sleep, get some recovery, and then slowly start to build your work up. Then the next week is what we call a prep week. So a prep week is I don't have a tournament this week, but I have a tournament next week, right? So prep week is I got to get my volume back up to playing. And if you think about it, when you go play a round of golf, okay, how many full swings does a tour player do in 18 holes?
40 something.
I hope not.
Too much.
I hope not. So, if you're going to shoot 70, right, I would say, probably 35, probably be full swings maximum. Then you have some chips and then you have putts, right? So if you have more, we're probably going to be a lot more than 70. So full swings, there's about 30 to 35, about 35 full swings when you play 18 holes. And like I said, you're going to play at least 9 holes on Tuesday. You're going to play 18 on Wednesday, 18 on Thursday, 18 on Friday, hopefully 18 on Saturday and Sunday, right? So you're going to be playing basically 5 or 6 days a week. So I need to get my volume back up to 35 full swings per day during my prep week, right? That doesn't seem like a lot. You're like, all I gotta do is 35 balls. Well, that's playing 18 holes. Now I want full process, pretend like break the yardage book out, pretend like you're playing, go through your whole process. So we get players used to running their process in the practice during the prep week, even getting the tournament, getting the greens cards or getting the whole layout, and imagine you're playing, but getting that volume back up to 35 on the prep week. Our workouts tend to be the same way. We do our pre-tournament workouts before we go to practice, and then we do our 3 to 4 workouts after play like we normally do. So just getting back into the regular volume, but I just don't have the 7 miles of walking and all the media and all that kind of stuff. So we'll add in some treadmill stuff or some high intensity just to keep their legs underneath them. Then there's one other type of week. There's what we call a rest prep week. This is, I had a tournament, I have 1 week break between the next tournament. So this week is part rest, part I got to prep for the next tournament, right? So you have tournament week, you have prep week, you have rest week, and you have rest prep week, right? Those are your 4 different weeks that tournament players are going to go. So sorry for the complicated answer, but it's not an easy answer. It was a great question, but it's not one answer. It depends on where you are in your practice versus play. But I think that's the number one thing. Was kind of understanding the layout of those 4 weeks, and we spend time really laying out those 4 weeks. Now let's talk about what you do when you practice. So when you go to the range and you're going to practice, and this is in your non-tournament weeks, right? I'm always saying to my players, the first question when I first start working with a player, the first thing I ask them is, "What's your superpower? Why are you on tour?" Right? And this is the mistake that most young players make, right? Is they'll say, "Oh man, I'm a great driver of the golf ball, but my problem is distance wedges," right? So they'll tell you what their superpower is, and they'll tell you what their kryptonite is, where their weakness is. The problem is when you say, "Okay, let's go practice," what do they practice? Right. They tend to try and practice their weakness. They're like, "Oh, my iron game's off right now, so I'm just going to go focus on iron game," and they neglect their superpower. And what will happen is if you have a superpower here and you have a weakness here, right? The reason you're on tour is because your superpower. If you neglect your superpower and that starts to get worse and your weakness starts to get better, now everything's average and now you're off tour because you don't have that superpower anymore. So what we tell our players is we say at a minimum, 60% of your practice is on your superpower. 60%, right? Now I'm telling you, most of the number ones in the world, most of the players that I've worked with that have become number 1 in the world, it's closer to 80% is on their superpower. They're like, "I'm the number 1 putter in the world and no one's going to beat me. I'm going to keep that as number 1. Do never neglect your superpower." So I take at least 60% of the time on the superpower. Of course, you can work on your weaknesses. Of course, we got to work on all aspects of your game. We got to work on your driver. We got to work on your distance wedges, your putting, and your irons, right? So you got to put them all in there, plus your conditioning, right? And then figure it out. But if I look at your practice session and I'm like, "Wait a second, how come you've only put in 2 hours of putting and that's the reason you're on tour?" "Oh, well, I'm so good at that. I don't need to spend time on it." I'm like, wrong. This we need to get. If you're number 2 in the world, I need you to be number 1 in the world on that. That's how I approach it with my players. Never let them lose their superpower. Always remember why they're on tour.
That's super important. That's a great point.
Yep.
I have a question real quick. When you say about resting, there is a kind of 2 resting kind of. One is passive, you just sleep and eat, and the other one you make a little something. But how can I say, what is the amount of resting is not dangerous? Like, for example, the muscle memory start to kind of degrade and focus.
Yes.
And stuff.
Yeah, so I always say number 1 thing when it comes to rest is sleep, right? You should be trying to get 8 hours of sleep. You can do whatever you want while you're awake, but at least if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, you're going to have rest problems. Okay, so I always say sleep's number 1, right? And then when I say rest, I'm not one of those guys where we take the clubs and we put them away for 2 weeks, right? At most, it might be 2 days where we're not hitting golf balls, maybe 2 or 3 days where we're just doing some rest recovery. But in the recovery, that's like they might spend 3 hours with like doing hot and cold and infrared and doing things just to get blood going, and then they're doing their workouts. And some guys are like, "I still like to chip and putt, no problem." I just like to take off maybe 48 hours maximum. And then there's always some light volume. It might be like, okay, we're going to go hit 35 balls a day. That doesn't seem like a lot, but again, that's 18 holes, right? So it doesn't take a lot of volume to maintain what you need to be able to play golf. I think a lot of people think, I'm going to go to the range, I'm going to go hit 200 balls. I'm like, 200 balls? Dude, you just played 6 rounds of golf, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of golf.
That's
right?
kind of overtraining, and also the overtraining kind of degrade the memory muscle also.
Well, when you say muscle memory, what to me is it's process. They've got to get used to running the problem. Like, what do I do when I walk up to the ball? Like, I check the wind, I look at the target, I figure out my distance, I figure out my club, I figure out the shot shape, I do a little practice shot, I walk in, I execute, I hit, I evaluate. That's a process. You need to do that as much as you can. Because if I'm your caddy, Victor, and we're playing the Masters and we have a 1-stroke lead, it's Sunday, you hit the perfect drive on 18, all we got to do is go up and down for par, and you look at me in the middle of the fairway and you go, Doc, I'm freaking out. And I go, hey, listen, totally understandable. Forget about it. Just run your process. We've done this a million times, right? If you can just go to your process and run your process, we're golden. But if you haven't done the process a million times, I can't even say that to you, right? So I'm like, the whole goal in practice is do the process so many times so that it's just autopilot.
It's on a green jacket. Don't worry. Just hit the green and 2 putts. Yeah.
That's it.
Easy.
Pedro, I think Pedro was going to ask you a question.
I have a quick one. What's the best thing to do after a round of a tournament that you're tired, but you wanna get your body a little bit better for next day? What's the best thing to do just after a tournament round?
So I always, like I said, I like to evaluate, what did we do good today? What did we learn today? What are we going to do about it? We talk about that. What are we going to do about it? Right. So if it was, this is all dependent on what the problem was. If it was like, I don't know what was going on today, but like the ball wasn't rolling on the greens like I thought it was. We'll say, well, here's my observation as a coach. Here's what I saw. Or do you want to go on the green and hit a couple just before we leave the tournament? It's up to the player. Like if they want to go do a couple things on that, no problem. I want them to get to the point where their headspace is good, where they're like, okay, I think I know what I need to do for tomorrow. Right. And some players are like, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to sleep on it in the morning. We'll go after this and we do it in the morning. And some players are like, no, I'm not leaving here until I know what I'm going to do for tomorrow. You just have to learn who that player is.
But in terms of your body, like stretching, what's the best thing to do after?
We're always doing recovery stuff after. I mean, you should see some of our players. Like if you go to John Rahm's house, his basement is like one of the best spas in the world. I mean, it's got like literally he can go from he can go from his hyperbaric chamber to his infrared chamber, to his cold plunge, to his hot tub, to his ozone thing. Like he'll just literally spend 2 or 3 hours. So I always tell my players, your goal is to do recovery so that when you wake up tomorrow, it doesn't feel like you played yesterday, right? So, and again, he's got a TV in his hyperbaric chamber. You can watch TV while you're doing stuff, but we really show our kids, we're building a whole recovery center at TPI right now, just so we can expose the players to all these things, because it makes a huge difference. I mean, people think, that baseball has a lot of volume. I mean, look at golf. PGA Tour is obviously going to make some changes. They have to, because Liv has done such a better job at this. But it's right now it's 11 months out of the year, and they're playing 5 or 6 times every week. I mean, it's crazy. The volume's crazy. It's not.
But when you're in a hotel in the middle of nowhere and you finish your round and you don't have all the
well, I'm saying our players travel with all this stuff. They have all kinds of stuff over there. But if you're at a hotel and you're like, hey, you got a bathtub there or a shower. You can do steam or heat. You can put ice from the ice machine into the bathtub and do ice stuff. You can do some type of stretching, mobility type of stuff, just to kind of get blood going. And of course, you can make sure you get sleep, right? Those are all simple things that you can do when it's just educating on. I always tell my players, I'm going to expose them to all types of stuff, from infrared gloves and things that you can put around your knees,
How
your back.
Sauna? How about sauna?
I'm a huge sauna fan. I love steam. I love sauna. I love cryotherapy. I like all. I mean, I'm all in on recovery stuff.
Pressure boots.
Everything. Love it. Yeah, the game ready ones, any of the things to get circulation going. And again, I always tell my players, experiment on that stuff. like there's a recovery trailer at the PGA Tour now too, where you can go in and you can try stuff. I'm like, try it. What do you have to lose? Like if you wake up the next day and you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. Well, guess what? You're going to go buy one of those for your house now. It's going to be there on something we're going to do every time. That's it. Who cares?
Perfect. Guys, we're a little bit at an hour and a half here. Amazing content. Anyone has a last question for Greg? Otherwise,
I really appreciate all you guys. Appreciate all you guys showing up here. And like I said, if there's anything we can ever do here at Titleist, let us know. I always say that all it takes is one player. You guys get one player in the top 10 in the world, and just, I saw that with Camilo Villegas in Colombia when that happened, and we saw that with Mito and with Joaquim in Chile. You get those sparks, and it's like kids see those players and they're like, they aspire to do that, and it's the sport goes crazy. So appreciate all you guys putting all the hard work in there to try and develop some players in Brazil. But it will pay off, I promise.
Perfect. I think Luca has one question.
So, like, really quick question. I don't know if you comment on that, but like when you go to the gym and do like some sort of exercise with weights, the weight, like, imagine it's like a dumbbells. Do we need to use like the maximum amount of weight we can lift, or do we use
I usually do somewhere around 8 rep max. So like whatever weight you could do 8 repetitions of, and then do 2 or 3 reps.
All right.
So I like to do like short reps, more sets, but use a weight that's somewhere around an 8 rep max. That's usually a safe range. Not saying that you don't have to push it more, but if you're like, okay, I could do 40 pounds 8 times. All right, well, let's do 3 sets of 3 reps of 40 pounds. And we'll do a little, 60-second break in between. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep, got it.
And Greg, just to close, one question that I'm not aware. Do you guys have in California or somewhere else like a boot camp where we can send the kids to spend 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever, so they can learn the process? Do you have something like this?
So we used to actually run a junior program here in San Diego. Our head of our junior advisory board, Milo Bryant, actually still runs one here in San Diego. He's got a really cool junior development program that a lot of times when coaches come out, they'll shadow him for the day and you can see what he's doing with the kids. But he does have something like that here in San Diego, but we don't at Titleist anymore. He took it over.
Okay.
But he's got something.
Okay. If you can just send me his contact by email, I think it would be great. Just
and
share with the parents.
And by the way, I'm sure he would do one of these little Zooms with you if you'd want to. He's a great guy.
Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. But I'd like to thank you, Greg. Thanks for the time. I know the last couple of days they were not easy, but I'm sure it's gonna get better. And hopefully next week you're 100%. But thanks for sharing all this very valuable information with the parents, the kids. I'm pretty sure now you just set the bar higher, and actually you showed where the bar should be. It's not just a matter of being higher, but where. So how they can go and progress from there. Thanks a lot for your time. And
I hope it helps. And if anybody needs to get me, my email is just greg.rose@mytpi.com, My Titleist Performance Institute. So greg@mytpi.com. Okay.
Perfect.
And
Thanks so much.
If you have any problem downloading that slideshow, let me know. Okay.
I just did. I think it's fine.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Obrigado, pessoal.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
My pleasure. See you guys.